Hello, welcome to the Frugal Kitchen. Today we're making vegetable lasagna,
Who's that?
It's vegetable lasagna.
Who?
Vegetable lasagna.
but I'm not making it lasagna. I'm using this whole grain rotini that I had because whole grain lasagna noodles are hard to find, and I didn't want to use fully enriched white flour lasagna noodles because the carbs would be a little bit higher. And I've done this before. Well, I've kind of done a similar thing before where I replaced lasagna noodles with regular noodles in the recipe, and it turned out fine, so I thought I would try it. That was 8 ounces of rotini, and my recipe does say you need 12 ounces of lasagna. And that's a little weird. I'm not really a fan of that because it looks like they come in 16-ounce packages, just like regular pasta does. So it does say to cook the lasagna first, so that's what I'm doing with the regular noodles, and then slice 2 to 3 zucchini in discs. I did use 3. I do think if you use 2, they need to be monstrous. So you could also replace squash with the zucchini, and that would turn out fine in this recipe. This recipe is one I've had for a while. I don't know where it originally came from, and it honestly might have come from, well, I don't think it came from me taking a meat lasagna recipe and transforming it. I'm pretty sure I originally got this as a vegetable lasagna recipe. The only vegetables in here are the zucchini and some spinach. So now we're going to cook the zucchini, throw it in a skillet with some nonstick spray on low heat or medium low heat, and let that cook for a while. So at this point, the pasta is all finished cooking. I'm going to drain it and then just leave it in the pot in the sink until it's time to add it to the rest of the ingredients. I did have to go back and forth with the zucchini a while, spraying it with nonstick spray periodically, covering it because I think that helps it cook faster, and stirring it so that it doesn't stick to the skillet. So I want to say the zucchini might have taken 15 minutes to cook. So that's just that. It'll get, if you're not used to cooking zucchini, or if you've never had zucchini and you're not sure if you'll like it, I do recommend you try it. I don't even remember when I tried. I think I must have tried it when I realized I had really high cholesterol and needed to eat more vegetables and less meat. And it has basically no flavor. It's a soft vegetable once you cook it. You do not eat it raw. So you basically cook it just like this, honestly, with a little bit of oil or even water, and stir it and let it soften. So it'll get kind of smushy and squishy, and it has a good texture. I don't really know how to describe the texture though, because it's like a pickle but not cold, if that makes any sense. So we're going to add some salt and pepper to this. It does say just whatever to taste, so I usually just put a few tiny pinches in and then keep stirring it up. It's not fully cooked yet. You might be able to see some of them that are sliced thinner than others are starting to wilt and look wrinkly. And then you can see some of them are changing color. They do get a little bit dark, kind of a little bit more see-through. But it's a very good vegetable. It's one of my favorite vegetables now. That and broccoli and spinach, I think, are my favorite vegetables. And I'm really glad that I started eating it. So now we're going to mince 2 cloves of garlic. And this was 1 clove that had 2 little pieces in it. So I said, fine, you're 2 cloves. You're a twin. Siamese twin garlic. Oh, that might not have been appropriate. Conjoined twin garlic? I don't know. Identical twin garlic. They came from the same egg. Does garlic have an egg? I don't know. That's kind of what I meant. Same zygote. That's not. I don't think garlic has zygotes either. I didn't pay attention in much of my science classes, in case you didn't notice. The science that I can't like relate to it in the real world, I didn't pay attention to. I'm going to sound like an idiot now, but for a long time when I was little, I didn't think atoms were real, atoms, because I couldn't see them, and I just didn't think it made any sense that we could invent a microscope so small that we could see things that we didn't even know existed. That was crazy to me. And so if I didn't understand it, I didn't believe it. I grew up Catholic. Did you know that? So mince the garlic, put it in a bowl. I've got a pretty large bowl here because of all the stuff we're going to add to it. And I debated whether or not I was going to include this egg. Since this is not a vegan recipe, I decided just to do it, and I think the egg acts as a binder for the cheese. So whisk an egg up with the garlic. The recipe does call for fresh spinach, 9 ounces it says. The grocery store was out of fresh spinach, so that was weird. So I had some leftover frozen. It's definitely not 9 ounces, but I figured that didn't matter that much. I should have microwaved it before I put it in the bowl because you can see there are some chunks of frozen spinach that do need to be made smaller. I didn't want like a giant mouthful of spinach when I made this. Like if I just left it all frozen and chunky, I would have been mixing it with the cheese and spreading it out in the pan, and it would have had, like, once it cooked and defrosted, a big old chunk of dry spinach. So I sliced up the big pieces into smaller pieces, not all that much smaller, but definitely more manageable. Pieces that I thought were small enough that if I got the whole thing in my mouth, it wouldn't be a surprise. It wouldn't be like, oh, what's this giant piece of spinach doing here? It would be more natural. Now we're going to add the ricotta, and I only used 15 ounces here, even though the recipe says 24 ounces, because this recipe is written in a Word document, and I thought perhaps I had typed that wrong, since 24 ounces is the quantity of the marinara sauce, and ricotta doesn't come in 24-ounce containers, or a variation where that would make sense. But this was not quite enough ricotta, so I'm leaving the 24 ounces on the recipe. Buy a 30-ounce container and use the rest for something. I don't know what to tell you to do with it. I'm so sorry. If cottage cheese is a good substitute for ricotta, I've never had cottage cheese, so I don't know if it is. That comes in 24-ounce containers. I'm so sorry. Anyway, add also, I put nutritional yeast flakes in here because I didn't want to bother buying Parmesan, but 3/4 cups of grated Parmesan. That was not measured out. I didn't want to do that many cups of nutritional yeast because it's not the same exact flavor. And then it says a teaspoon of red pepper flakes, which I don't have, so I just did some cayenne to taste, and then stir everything up. So I didn't get too far behind, I don't think. It does say add salt and pepper and mix well. So salt and pepper should be coming up soon in this, and if I forgot it, that would make sense because I tend to forget steps when I'm recording here. Oh, there's a salt and pepper. Haha, did not forget it. And that's actually all the spices. You may want to add a little more. I didn't think that the cayenne was prominent, but it's also, I guess, the tomato sauce and the cheese kind of overpower the flavor. You don't really need the spices to do anything. It's very good because it tastes very heavily of sauce and cheese. So that's my weird substitute for this one, and my quantity being incorrect. And the only reason I think I do need 24 ounces of ricotta is because when you spread it in the pan, it didn't seem to cover as much space as it should have. So that's the finished zucchini. That's what it looks like when it's cooked. You can kind of see the seeds there because of the way it cooks. So that's kind of what you're going for, what your goal should be. And it's a very good vegetable. So start here with your 9x13 pan. Spray it with a nonstick spray. This is the same one I was using for the zucchini. It's just canola oil. And now we have to take the marinara sauce and pour a half cup into the pan. I might have edited this myself. I believe the first lasagna recipe I made just said something about putting noodles on the bottom, and they burned. So now I put a bit of sauce on the bottom, and I don't have any issue with anything burning or sticking to the pan. That could be also because of the nonstick spray, but I feel like it's mostly because of the pasta sauce. So spread it around like that. I again only used half a cup, and you just get like a really thin layer of sauce. Now, if you're using real lasagna, the recipe does say to cook the lasagna ahead of time. I would try to do it in a pan this shape, just because then you might not have an issue with it breaking when you pull it out. That's the weird thing about lasagna, and one of the reasons I don't like to make lasagna really is because it's so delicate after it's cooked. You can barely like manipulate it, but you basically layer, spread out your lasagna, like layer one layer of lasagna, and then start with the rest of the ingredients. So it does say add a layer of lasagna, then add half of the zucchini that you cut up. So just eyeball it, and then just like spread it out nice and evenly. It doesn't have to touch, you don't have to make it completely cover everything. Um, that will be very frustrating if you try. Then throw on the mixture of soft cheese, I guess I'll say, the softer cheese. You want to do half of that as well, which again was hard to measure out. And once I got to this point, I realized I did not have quite enough um, ricotta. So this is kind of what I did, and then I tried smearing it out and evening it, but it didn't really cover. Like again, if I feel like perfectionists like me, and maybe you too, will want to have everything covered. You don't want to. You feel like you don't want to see the other ingredients below the one you're working on, but that's okay. That will not affect the taste of the lasagna. Now we're going to add some mozzarella cheese. It does say you need 3/4 cups of mozzarella. It looks like 2 cups total are what you're going to be using. 3/4 cups for the first round, and then you're going to layer it again. So it does say to take a third of the remaining mozzarella sauce, which I wish it kind of had a measurement, because I didn't measure, and I'm eyeballing a third, and I don't know if that's a third of what we had left. So I'm just trying to guess on that, and spread it around as best you can like this. It's fine. You basically just want things to cook evenly, and the everything here is like already technically cooked, so you're only really worrying about melting the cheese properly. Then do another layer of your lasagna noodles or your rotini. Um, it will not be all of the lasagna. It should not be all of the lasagna that you use up at this point. Then you put the remaining zucchini on. Followed by the remaining ricotta, parmesan, and spinach mixture. I will add right here, in case I forget, that the nutritional yeast didn't affect the flavor at all. I could have made vegan parmesan, but it would have involved, the only recipe I have involves cashews, and I wasn't sure how cashews would bake with the rest of the real cheese. I wasn't afraid it would be kind of odd. So 3/4 cups of mozzarella on that, and then you'll finish up with the remaining lasagna noodles, which hopefully you have enough to cover the whole thing. I almost think maybe you should cook 16 ounces and then just double layer it if you're doing real lasagna noodles, in case you don't have quite enough. And then the remaining marinara sauce, which again is 24-ounce can. Sorry, that's a jar. Spread everything out, and then top with 1/2 cup of mozzarella. And that's the final step as far as everything that goes on before you bake it. Well, that's actually the final step. After that is baking it and then eating it. Nothing else is happening next. So spread it evenly. Do your best. Again, the good thing about lasagna that I think a lot of people don't realize, even though there's layers, is that it kind of it ends up looking like a casserole when it's done. So in this, I covered my pan with foil, which is not on the original recipe, because I knew I had exposed pasta. Cook it at 50 for 30 minutes. Um, I normally don't cover it when I use regular lasagna because the lasagna is not exposed. Usually the cheese and pasta sauce covers everything. But if you do have exposed pasta, that is going to dry out if you leave it uncovered. If you cover it when you cook it, the pasta should be fine and not get all crunchy and hard. Another tip that you might not have noticed or known before, I certainly didn't until recently, is that foil doesn't get hot. I've had a coworker who covered something with foil in the kitchen at work, and I was like, "Why are you touching that foil? Aren't you going to burn your hands?" And she said, "No, foil doesn't get hot." And I was like, "What? I've never even realized this." But so I took the foil off right away, even though the pan was hot, because foil doesn't get hot. It's amazing. So cut yourself a little square. I believe I did let it cool off here a bit. You can see the steam coming, and I am not the kind of person who can put very hot food in my mouth. It burns me like nobody's business. But I can stand under a really hot shower without it bothering me. That's very strange. I think that I have a friend who is the same way, but her husband eats really hot food, or vice versa. Like they can eat really hot food, but they can't get in a really hot shower. So anyway, that's me. But you can see all of the amazing ingredients involved in this recipe. It does take a lot of ingredients. But most of the ingredients aren't very expensive, so that's one reason why lasagna is a very popular dish. It's also very filling. This was very tasty and filling. I still have plenty of it left over. The spinach was fine. There was no real issue with the chunks. Everything turned out fine. And the cheese and the pasta sauce, which it does say marinara sauce. You get whatever kind you like, as long as it's 24 ounces and it's not super thick. It turned out really great. I don't think I would change anything. I would maybe, if I wanted to, look for a recipe that has more vegetables because this isn't enough vegetables. Like, it's vegetable lasagna, but it's really just zucchini lasagna, kind of, right? Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this recipe. Please like, share, and subscribe if you found this video helpful, and I will see you soon. Happy eating, everyone.